Knowledge is power, and this is powerful stuff. Wellness Education Cannabis Advocates of Nevada present the We Can 702 Nevada Cannabis News Hour with the We Can radio team. For the next 60 minutes, we'll take an in-depth look at the cannabis reform revolution sweeping the nation. Now, let's fire up the news hour. Here is the We Can radio team.
To the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. I'm your host, Kurt Dukach, co-host Michael McCullough, and Perry is in Italy.
In Alaska.
No, he's in Italy.
Italy?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's in Italy right now. Him and Barbie went out there, so I'm sure he's not listening, but we wish you the best, Perry, because I know if I was in Italy, I wouldn't be listening to the show.
No, I wouldn't be listening to much on the net, that's for sure. So, anyway, we have another week, and there's always cannabis in the news these days. It's just, it is something that's come into the public consciousness and is not going away. So, let's see what we have here. The one thing that caught my eye immediately, because we always try to look at local stuff first, is there was a local piece that Democratic leader Harry Reid said he needs to know more about the subject of marijuana in order to determine whether he's going to be for legalization or not in this November's election. And this comes to us from rollcall.com, and that's a political website about dealings on Capitol Hill, and the reporter on the article is Bridget Bowman. So
wasn't he a strong supporter of medical marijuana?
And indeed, that's what he said. I support medical marijuana 100%, and I'm going to wait and see how the debate progresses on recreational use of marijuana. He said this to the Las Vegas Sun reporter Megan Messerly, and he addressed reporters on Tuesday while attending the opening of the First Med Health and Wellness Center Health Clinic in Las Vegas. Now, I don't know. That sounds like it could be a dispensary, but I kind of think it's not.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I mean, very well the name could be, but it's also one of those places that kind of subject is brought up, because when you're talking about a health and wellness center, I mean, this goes hand in hand with health and wellness. I mean,
without a doubt.
Yeah. So I mean, even if it's not specifically a cannabis related thing, it's related to cannabis just because of. We all want to be healthy.
Mm-hmm. and indeed, Reid has shown that he is supportive of this, as I just read this quote, but he's been very skeptical about legalization in the past. He says, I'm very, very dubious and concerned now, and people better start making their case to me. They haven't done that. And he said he's a huge fan of medical marijuana. He knows friends who've been benefited from using it, referring to its use combating pain and suffering and extending life, and which it does for cancer patients, or potentially does for cancer patients. So the quote I want to go back to here is, I'm very, very dubious and concerned now, and people better start making their case to me. Well, you know, Harry is still your senator for the state of Nevada. So, well, yeah, that's one way of making the case to you. But a little baksheesh here and there goes a long way in political circles. But he's still your senator, and Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, whatever flavor of political stripe you are, he does represent the state of Nevada. So by all means, call him up. Call his office up, write him an email, get in touch with him, and let him know how you feel. Let him know that that if he's dubious and concerned, okay, let's assuage those concerns. Let's talk to him about the therapeutic benefits, not in a strictly medical sense, because people can use cannabis as a stress reliever without necessarily being patients on the program, and it's certainly a lot better than hitting 4 or 5 shots at the end of the day, or highballs, or a 6-pack of beer even. And so I'd urge anyone listening to call his office up and say, hey, this is all right. It's a safe substance, but not only is it a safe substance, but how do you justify, after all these years, putting people in jail for non-violent use of a plant? and they can make all the arguments that they want. We've heard them all before, the gateway theory, the broken windows theory, all these things. But in truth, anyone who listens to this broadcast is already on this side of the debate, except the occasional DEA agent. How you doing there? And so get in touch with him. Get in touch with your politicians at every level and tell them we demand this reform at this point, because it just doesn't make sense to put people in jail. We have the Bureau of Prisons, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, spends over $8 billion a year incarcerating people. And you know, I'm glad that there are certain violent people in there. I was glad when they took John Gotti, the crime boss, in and sent him off to Marion, Ohio. He was a good case on a more of a state level. I'm glad Charles Manson is still in jail. People like that need to be there, but for cannabis crimes, absolutely not. Especially when you look at the fact that cannabis sentences are, on average, longer than sentences for violent crime, assault, sexual abuse, burglaries, thefts, all these sort of things. It's an absurd situation. So you really need to get a hold of Harry and say, you know, just chill out, relax.
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Yeah, thank you indeed.
Turn around, look around the people around you. I mean, just about, you know, what does they say? 2/3 of Americans are now using cannabis, pretty much.
Well, we did a story last week that says 1 in 8 Americans says that they use cannabis on a regular basis, but that's based on government surveys.
Yep.
And Gallup poll. But people are not going to want to tell the government that they're using something that the government is going to throw them in jail for. You know, and studies that I've seen within the past decade say that 50% of Americans have admitted to using cannabis at some point in their lives. So if it's gone up to 63%, I wouldn't be surprised, because you look at the support for medical cannabis over the last 15 years, and it's grown from the high 50s to 71, and now it's over 81% support the idea of medical cannabis.
And if we do get rid of this, you know, this stigma, and well, not necessarily stigma, if we legalize this and get rid of this classification, I see that number jumping way, way, way up on the occasional user for the recreational use. Because right now, what's stopping a lot of people is the fear of getting caught. It's not the fear of, you know, the dangers of this, or the fact that they think that if they do this, they're going to go use heroin or anything like that. They all know that reefer madness is not true. We've heard it for, you know, most of our lives. Some people all of their lives, and they've never seen,
especially the old guys on the side of the camera there.
You know, and they've never seen it happen, you know, to their friends. You know, so the only thing stopping people from, and we're talking responsible adult use is what he's again, you know, has a question about. We're talking, you know, about instead of going out on the weekend and getting blitzkrieg drunk and forgetting what you do and making really poor decisions, going out and smoking a little bit of cannabis and enjoying yourself with
and
friends,
devouring bags of Cheetos. You know, and that's I think that is the central point here that we need to make and we need to stress to people, and why people are opposed to it, because as you said, it would be better for them to go out and smoke a bowl, smoke a joint, eat a brownie on the weekend than go out and get blazing drunk. Now, the alcohol industry is well established in this country. I mean, you can go back to the founding of the country and the Whiskey Rebellion while George Washington was in office, and tried to put a federal tax on whiskey, and was the genesis of the whole moonshine movement in the Appalachian area of the country. And I've heard more recently lawmakers say, well, alcohol is an established tradition in this country, as if hemp use wasn't, as if cannabis use wasn't. And the idea is, though, that if you are a consumer, a responsible, as you say, consumer of cannabis, then you are not likely to be mixing that. I recall back in the party days of the 80s, seeing people, hearing people, they'd they'd get their load on with booze, but they wouldn't want to pass out, so they'd do a couple of lines of coke, and they'd pick themselves back up, and then they'd have some more booze, and back and forth and back and forth. But I have not. We've the weekend parties, for example, and many others that I've been to, parties at Champs and the like. You don't see booze at that party. Or those parties. You don't see even a lot of wine at those parties.
Well, you do, but it's very few in between, and the use is responsible because the cannabis users have the responsible. They're in control of their facilities. They know what decisions they're making, and they're like, hey, I don't want to be drunk. I've got something that's making me perfectly happy already. So most of them are just drinking it, I think, out of habit, not so much to get drunk. It's just they like to have that drink in their hand.
Or depending on who you are, like police, for example, are known to be not all, but a goodly number of police are known to be very heavy drinkers when they're off duty, some even when they're on duty. But it's the idea that they don't have an alternative. That's what they have to do. And there are so many industries where people don't have an alternative. We read stories about airline pilots who, right here in Vegas a couple of years ago, who they were knocking back shots the night before, and then 8 a.m. they show up to be flying out of McCarran. And so the booze industry does not want the legalization of cannabis because they see it as a threat to their potential profit. And we've seen at these parties, and as you pointed out, if people are using cannabis, they are less likely to be using alcohol in any form, beer, wine, hard liquor, and so the established alcohol industry is very afraid of that. And they don't want to see widespread use of cannabis. So it's a crazy situation, and it's up to us to all register to vote and get out there and change it for ourselves. Because longtime activist Jack Herer, who a number of strains have been named after, famously said that the worst effect of cannabis is what happens when you get caught with it. And that's exactly the point you were making.
And speaking of getting caught with it, we had a big fight this weekend. I
didn't even know we were mad at each other.
Nah, the UFC was in town. This was a big thing. I mean, we had a couple of dispensaries were actually offering all sorts of specials because of the UFC fight in town and everything. And it was Nate Diaz was fighting, who is the brother of Nick Diaz, who has been caught a couple of times, 3 times now, for using cannabis as a performance-enhancing drug. He was the latest big case that we were talking about probably about 6-7 months ago on Nevada Cannabis News. Well, Nate lost, and in his post-fight interview, he pulled out his CBD vape pen. And he took a couple hits of CBD vape because, I mean, you look at the guy, he just got beat up. I mean, you could see it in his face, the swelling and the inflammation. You could tell he was just in a fight, and that's what he was in. And he was using CBD after the fight, after his post-fight drug test, and during the interview, and they asked him about it on camera. What do you got? And he said, it's CBD oil. It's really good for the inflammation, just to get myself right after a fight. And now the UFC is talking about possibly suspending him for a year
for use of a substance which is legal in all 50 states, because CBD pens are not psychoactive in any way. They're not banned by the federal scheduling or anything like that.
It's perfectly safe. It's 50 state legal. You can buy it anywhere.
Ship it
and
anywhere.
It's true. The CBD part of the medicine is really good for the inflammation, and not so much as the pain killing effect of THC would have, but the inflammation, and that which is you could see he had. And so they're talking about giving him a 1-year suspension now, because in UFC terms, the fight starts 6 hours before that bell rings and 6 hours after the bell rings. So in their eyes, even though
still in the fight,
he was in competition still, even though he had already taken a post-fight drug screening, he's still in competition. So even if he passes that drug screening, they're talking they can suspend him because he was still fighting.
And if they had taken a couple of Advil, nobody would have said anything.
And with him doing it on camera right there, it's as good as a failed drug
It's
test
all
in
the
their
evidence
eyes.
they need, yeah.
So even if it wasn't CBD and he was just, joking or doing a media ploy, trying to get the word of CBD out there, we don't know. I mean, it could have been anything in that pen, because it's a pen. We don't know what's in it.
And the thing is, he was taking this, as you say, for its anti-inflammatory properties. And having worked in this community, the medical community, with patients for a long time, I've done a lot of research on this, and inflammation in general is one of the most serious causes in the human body of debilitation, of aging, and ultimately of complications that lead to death. Because when your body inflames in areas, it cannot properly respond, and its own healing mechanisms don't work well. And so you can look at studies of any number of people at end of life who have used these non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, like any of the common stuff, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, even aspirin, and they wind up having health complications down the road. And some of these people have been using these things for years and years and decades, and mankind has always had a safer substance available right up until about 77 years ago or so, 79 years ago maybe now, when they banned cannabis. And to my mind, if you can do something that is effective at pain relief, that is effective at helping your body heal itself, then nobody, no boxing commission, no government, nobody has the right to tell you that you don't have a basic human right to treat your own pain in your own body. And so it's a crazy thing, and they're going to take away this guy's livelihood for a year.
Yeah, they're talking about it potentially. It's being investigated right now. So it's frustrating to see stuff like this. He's not hurting anyone, but in your point, he could have probably got an anti-inflammatory shot before, during, right after from his trainers, and that would have been okay. Even though those steroids, we know what steroids do to people, they're awful. They have all sorts of side effects, but that would have been perfectly fine. I'm sure that if his trainer came in and said, we need to give you, some, shots here, some cortisone, whatever it is, that would have been okayed by the UFC because it's not considered a performance enhancing drug. So, it's just sickening. It didn't affect his performance. His performance is over. His only performance now is getting healthy and talking to the cameras.
And getting ready for getting ready for his next bout.
Explain why he lost,
It's incredible. And the hypocrisy that's there. And I don't know the people who are behind the UFC. I don't know who they are, what they do in their time off and all, but they're likely either taking a drink or two or more afterwards and celebrating what they're doing as they're condemning this person, or even more hypocritically, as you point out, so many Americans have now admitted to using cannabis, or not only admitting it, but in some cases coming out of the closet and asserting that they have a right to do so. But you've got to wonder, with an organization as large as the UFC, how many of those people who aren't getting tested are toking up?
Well, it says here in the article from the Review Journal that marijuana is only banned in competition. So basically, unless you fail a pre-fight drug screening or a post-fight drug screening, then it's not a banned substance.
But my understanding is they don't drug screen for CBD, cannabidiol. They screen for THC, the psychoactive substance. So I don't know whether their standard drug tests are even going to show it. They're essentially going to convict him on his own word. He's made a statement against his own interest, and they're going to believe that, even if he later retracts that and says, "Oh, I was joking about it."
Yeah.
So it's a crazy situation.
Yep. So.
Anyway, I think it's time to take a break and take a breather, and we'll be back in just a minute or so.
From the soothing sounds of a water wall to the warmth, wood interior, and beautiful artwork, as soon as you enter Sahara Wellness, you are welcomed into a relaxing space where we strive to provide our patients with a healthy balance of mind, body, and spirit. That balance is achieved through a compassionate and knowledgeable staff who possesses both a passion for the medical cannabis industry as well as unrivaled dedication to assisting those in need of a natural method of pain relief. Our bud tenders are available to assist patients in selecting cannabis-based medicine that best suits their needs from our selection of flower, waxes, CBD lotions, and delicious edibles. Sahara Wellness is located at 420 East Sahara Avenue, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out our entire menu at www.420sahara.com.
Attention medical marijuana patients. Did you know that your medicine could contain pesticides, heavy metals, and even mold? Are you really sure that you're getting the same potency every single time? Well, the answer to that question is simple. Digipath Labs. Digipath Labs is a state-approved laboratory run by scientists. So look for the Digipath Labs quality seal on your next medicine and on the door of your favorite dispensary. To learn more, go to digipathlabs.com. That's DIGIPATH labs.com.
You know,
Welcome.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour.
I'm stoked on this issue. I do want to get right into this thing because we were just talking in the last segment about how this UFC fighter was potentially going to be sanctioned or suspended for up to a year, while in Connecticut, and we get this story from Dave Collins over at the Associated Press, and a Connecticut state worker who was fired after he was caught smoking marijuana on the job was punished too harshly and should get his job back, according to the state Supreme Court of Connecticut. Now, this fellow, and who he is doesn't really matter, so we won't name him, but he was fired from his maintenance job at the University of Connecticut Health Center in Farmington in 2012 after a police officer caught him smoking pot in a state-owned vehicle. Oh, the horrors. He had no previous disciplinary problems since he'd been hired in 1998, so that's 14 clean years of no infractions, and he had received favorable job evaluations according to his union. He was arrested, but then the charges were later dismissed. So state officials said the firing of this New Hartford resident was the only appropriate penalty for his conduct, and not doing so would send a bad message to employers, which is why we can't legalize pot, because it would send a bad message to kids. It's absolutely crazy. So this guy took the case to arbitration, and the arbitrator disagreed with the state of Connecticut, and he overturned the firing, and saying that this fellow should be suspended without pay for 6 months and subject to random drug testing for a year after he returned to work. Well, the state appealed, and a Superior Court judge overturned the arbitrator's decision on the grounds that it violated Connecticut's public policy against marijuana use. And then the SEIU, of whom this man was a member, appealed the judge's ruling to the Connecticut Supreme Court. And all 7 of the boy, I want to say Nevada, I'm so used to this out here, the Connecticut Supreme Court, all of them agreed that the lower court judge was wrong to overturn the arbitrator's ruling, saying that while state policy on drug use in the workplace allows for firing, it does not require it. Justices also said that judicial second-guessing of arbitration awards is uncommon and should be reserved only for extraordinary circumstances. He said and they kind of cover themselves. The Chief Justice Chase T. Rogers wrote in his decision, "The misconduct at issue was completely unacceptable, and we do not condone it." Well, fine, you don't condone it, but at the same time, he wrote, by the arbitrator's estimation, this person's personal qualities and overall record indicate that he is a good candidate for a second chance. Moreover, the discipline that the arbitrator imposed was severe and sends a message to others who might consider committing similar misconduct with that painful consequences will result. And, this whole case, this is a tough one, because you've got a guy who is smoking in a state vehicle while working, so it's kind of hard to defend that.
Yeah.
Yet at the same time, if he were smoking a cigarette, likely no one would have said a thing.
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to, like, if it was his car, you could kind of fight that it's my private space, regardless if it's on public property. It's my private space in my car. You know, I bought it, I pay for it. This is, you know, it's not public. Nobody can just come in here. But with a state vehicle and being a state employee, that makes a little different situation there.
But fortunately, and I would see this ruling as another small step in the progression towards normalization of this substance, cannabis, because you have a state Supreme Court saying no, you took too harsh of a penalty on this guy, or imposed too harsh of a penalty, and the prosecutor declined to prosecute it, so he has no criminal record. But putting someone out of their job has long-term consequences, and so it's good to see that that the Supreme Court of Connecticut decided that, you know, you don't have to go that far, and as they said, it's you know, it's not required, and I do see this as a step forward, even a small one.
Yep. It really should be up to the employer, regardless. You know.
Whereas in another state, Colorado, boy, they're going in a totally different direction, right? And we get from Westward, which is the alternative weekly out of Denver, written by Lindsay Bartlett, news about the Colorado cannabis growers who will go head-to-head in the grow-off. Now, that sounds like something interesting, and, you know, we've had across the nation, across the world, various cannabis cups, and certainly the Cannabis Cup in Amsterdam every year is the center of the cannabis world when it happens. And so in Colorado, Shum Shah, founder of the Grow Off, says that there's a new competition in town that aims to crown the best cultivator in Colorado. We hope you guys are ready to grow some really fine weed. And the Grow Off is designed as a cannabis competition for the industry. In its inaugural year, the three founders plan to send a mystery strain of solid genetics, non-hermaphroditic, of cannabis to 50 different growers around the state. And after documenting the growing process over the course of 6 months, the contest will determine who qualifies as the best marijuana cultivator in Colorado. Now, this is really interesting as compared to any other cup that or Grow Off event that we've seen, because everybody's starting with the same basic stock, you know, and so it's not like this one's got lemon haze and that one's got sour diesel.
Yeah,
and the other one's got,
you're not just judging the end product, which is how most cannabis cups are. It's the end product, and it's the best of that plant that they turn in for the competition. Whereas this looks like it's going to be more judged on how you grow it.
Well, but
and
more
what you
importantly,
use.
it starts everybody at the same starting line. I mean, because you'll have higher yielding or lower yielding plants with higher THC or this and that, and which will affect the personal preferences of the judges. So here, you know, everybody is starting equal, because they're all going to get clones or seeds of the same strain, and they're going to go from there. And I actually think it makes a lot of sense if you want to have bragging rights that I'm the best grower, well, you've got to start on a level playing field. So sadly, though, any of you listeners here who live in the state of Nevada, you're not going to be able to be part of this. This is something for Colorado providers, and you don't want to be going to Colorado, getting that clone, bringing it back here, and then bringing your finished meds back, because that just wouldn't work out too well for you. So it's just an interesting concept, and I think that even though this is the first of its kind, I don't think it'll be the last. I think as we have more mainstream, the mainstreaming of marijuana, that you're going to find that other competitions pick this up, and they might be with indicas or with sativas or with hybrids or whatever, and I think it's another good step forward.
And this is something that we could actually almost implement within our systems here in Nevada. It would just have to be like one grower sends out, you know, to all the other growers, you know, the strain, and that grower isn't one who's competing, you know, or we'd have to have it come basically from a patient being donated in, and I could see it as a big marketing thing for them. It's like, come try our, whatever we name it, at our place, and they could sell legally to the patients their, thing, and then the patients could judge which ones they think were the best by going to all the different dispensaries and trying them all.
So this is a good idea, but I've got one for weekend to maybe work on. And instead of just having a grow off with this one strain, let's do a triathlon or let's do a decathlon and give growers 3 strains or 6 strains or 10 strains and see how they do across a range of them.
We could do a triathlon with the same strain too, where you have the best flower, the best edible from the flower, and the best concentrate from that flower.
Well, this sounds like a weekend project to work on, by all means.
So I mean, but it'll all still be coming from that same flower, So who comes up with the best edible with that, Because edibles really can be matched to the flavor and the terpenes in the strains, and that's what makes a high-end, top-notch edible. I mean, anybody can take it and make it into oil and throw it into brownies. That's easy enough. But to take that flower and work it into that recipe and use the flavors and the smells of the flower in the recipe itself, that's where the real art comes in. And then concentrates, there's so many different ways and styles now, and just to come up with which one tastes the best and hits the best.
Well, with edibles, a lot of people and a lot of commercial places will triple process their butter and strain it and restrain it, heat it, restrain it again, and all, to take the cannabis taste away. And so even if there were subtle flavors, you're losing it, because in taking every bit of the plant material away and then taking the butter solids away and just using the clarified butter, you are getting down to a basic oil without a lot of flavor. And as far as edibles go, well, I mean, as far as concentrates go, the technology is out there already, and I know of companies that are using it where they will, as they're processing the cannabis for the oil, that they take and they're able to separate out the individual terpenes, 22 of them, and they can take those terpenes, which are the flavor components, and recombine them in any way that they want, so that they can get almost any flavor that they want. So it would be interesting to see if we could, if we could have something like this here in Nevada, and there's no reason we shouldn't.
Yeah, it would have to. Yeah, I guess it could. Well, we're allowed to home grow, so we could also do it with the home cultivation. But I think they could also do this within the MME systems also.
It would be interesting to see it on both levels.
Yep.
So let's see, what else have we got going on here? Well, a national poll, surprise, surprise, a majority supports legalizing marijuana. This comes to us from Politico.com and author Nick Gass. And we've seen this, and we've reported on the program before that slightly more than half, that 54% of Americans have said that marijuana use should be made legal across the country. Now, if Hillary got 54%, she'd consider it a great victory. If Trump got 54%, he'd consider it, a landslide. And in fact, when George W. Bush was reelected in 2004, and he won the election with 50.1%, he said that gave him a mandate for change, and he had the support of the American people behind him. So, this is significantly larger than that margin, and yet people across, Harry Reid, as we were saying in the earlier song, I'm not too sure about that, but so many people do support this, that it is inevitable, as is the tide, and it is going to change. And I remember growing up, everything I learned, everything I knew, I learned from Star Trek, or needed to learn, I knew from Star Trek. And there was this episode, Mirror, Mirror, in the alternate universe. And just before he's about to leave that alternate universe, he challenges the evil, bearded Spock. He says that, any system that, that the Empire was bound to fail. And so any resources that were spent in continuing that system, which was inevitably going to fail, it was illogical, it was wasteful. And if this is going to happen, then not person should go into jail for this. Not one more person should have a conviction, something which will prevent them from getting higher education, from getting jobs, from getting into public housing or anything like that. And so, what we see is that there are clear majorities across demographic groups. And, I said a little earlier, I misstated. I said that 81% of the American people now support the use of medical marijuana. No, actually, it's 89%. You can't get 89% of Americans to agree on anything, even that pizza is good. And so that debate is over.
Yep, and yeah, where is it going? The other 10% of those people
are DEA agents.
Yeah, they're DEA agents.
Jailers.
And people are crazy anyway.
Defense lawyers and various people like that. It's
and this is why personally I'm on the side of question 2 100%. It's not a perfect bill, but it doesn't move us back, and this is going to stop at least the people in Nevada from going to jail for a plant. Then if question 2 passes, the only people that will be going to jail are the people who are abusing this plant. You know what I mean? Who are strictly in it for the profit and are still out there selling it, when they're not supposed to be. And, this will stop all those people that are just using it responsibly from getting in trouble. So,
although I disagree. I don't think those people, even if they're doing it commercially and all, should be going to jail. If they're selling illicit to the black market, then they should be hit with civil penalties because the taxes that they should have paid that they didn't pay it, and a penalty on those taxes. But why should the rest of us have to pay to keep these people in prison?
Yeah, and I wasn't saying that I don't believe that they're really breaking any real laws there either by selling cannabis, because they're really not hurting people. But to say it is still in this law, it will still be against the law to do that. I don't believe they should go to jail for it. None of us really should ever go to jail for this. I mean, if you take a gun and you're holding up somebody who has it, or you're going and robbing somebody else, who has it, yes, you should go to jail.
Behavior.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't care what it's for. I mean, if somebody breaks into your house and you got guns in your house because you're trying to protect your house, and you just so happen to have cannabis, I don't believe that should be a crime.
Whereas federally, it's a 5-year enhancement.
Yeah,
a sentencing enhancement.
If you're pulling the gun and shooting people for no reason, or just shooting blind because you think you're being raided, that's a different kind of story. But I don't believe that people should go to jail. But I don't believe also that we should not vote for question 2 just because it doesn't allow people to grow ungodly amounts of cannabis for personal use or whatever it is. I mean, it does allow for 6 plants. There is the 25-mile rule, which we all know can be beat. I mean, it's a garbage rule. But
ultimately it'll be overturned in court, because it's ultimately unconstitutional in my view, because the Full Faith and Credit Act, the section of the Constitution, and the equal protection in the 14th and 15th Amendments, more importantly, say you've got to treat everybody the same way, give them the same due process. So you can't say, okay, well, you live on this side of the line so you can grow it, and I live on this side of the line so I can't. And ultimately I believe that's going to be overturned, that part of the initiative, if it gets passed. So I would not use that as any reason to not vote for.
That's one of the biggest reasons I'm hearing pushback from people in the community, even people that are patients, which people got to also remember, this doesn't affect us as a patient. It doesn't. What I have going on with my medical right now, it doesn't change. And just because there's a 25-mile rule. Well, look at it this way. Right now, there's a whole state rule. Right now, nobody in the state can grow. So this is loosening restrictions. It might not be loosening them to the point where you want them to be, but it is a loosening of restrictions. And you're going to vote against the bill because it's loosening restrictions? It just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not perfect, but it's not tightening any restrictions on anybody. It's loosening them all up and making things easier for us.
Before we used the Apollo program to land astronauts on the moon, we had the Gemini program, and before that we had the Mercury program. You have to move incrementally in certain areas, and certainly this is one of them, where you still have a lot of people who are not understanding it. Once again, referring back to our senior state senator, Harry Reid, saying he's dubious. But, you know, we didn't get 747s before biplanes, and so if people are saying, oh, it's not enough, great. Let's go that far, and let's put another initiative on the next election ballot.
You're going to have to get this step first, you know what I mean, before you can take that next step. And, you know, you're not always, this is the government, and I tell this to a lot of people. I mean, the government isn't running a sprint. They're lucky if they're even in a jog half the time. Most of the time, they're just sitting around talking about things and not getting anything done. So to get something done in little chunks, that's how you got to do it. The government moves very slowly.
And I would point out to people who object to that this is exactly what happened in our own NRS 453A, the state medical marijuana law, over the past few years. People were all up in arms and did not want to have what was Senate Bill 374 passed in 2013, because there was a sunset provision that said by April of 2016, all patient rights to grow their own medicine would go away. And so a lot of people opposed it for that, but fortunately the bill passed. We now have dispensaries, we now have cultivation and all this. And in speaking with the sponsor, friend of the show, Tick Segerblom, said that I did what I could get past. I could not overcome law enforcement objections and the conservative upstate senators and put a sunset and just allow people to grow indefinitely. So I had to put that sunset into it in 2016. He said, but I'm still going to fight for it. And indeed, in the 2015 session, Tick was able to get language inserted into a bill that extended that sunset out to 2018. And he has been saying all along he wants to get rid of restriction on patients cultivating entirely, but he passes what he can. He knows that sometimes it's a game of inches. You can't make a first down you can't make the 10 yards for the first down every time. Sometimes you're just making half a yard. Sometimes you're just making a little bit, and we have to be happy that we're even able to move the ball that much farther.
Yeah, and we're not getting sacked.
No, well, we will get sacked if we don't go to our next commercial and then have our sponsors who are graciously paying for this program. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Armin Yamanijian, CEO of Essence Dispensaries, and I'd like to let you know a little bit about our company. As a completely complimentary service, our on-site nurse is here to meet with any patient or non-patient to discuss dosing and best practices. We have 3 convenient locations. We have one location on Tropicana between Decatur and Jones, which is our west side location. Our Henderson location is on the corner of Sunset and Green Valley Parkway, and we're proud to announce that we have the first and only dispensary on the Las Vegas Strip, on the corner of Las Vegas Boulevard and Sahara. Our prices are the lowest prices in town and the highest quality medicine. Please come and see us at one of our 3 convenient locations or visit us at essencevegas.com. You can also call us at 702-978-7575. Once again, the number is 702-978-7575.
Nevada Pure is a premier, vertically integrated medical marijuana enterprise which offers top quality medical marijuana, great customer service, and a safe, private environment. We carry a wide selection of medical cannabis strains. Our knowledgeable staff will assist you in finding the correct strain for your condition. Our trained professional staff can educate you on various strains for your condition, methods of consumption, responsible cannabis use, and the wellness benefits of cannabis. We aim to help patients achieve a better quality of life. Medical marijuana is a medicine, not an intoxicant. It's about a patient's well-being at Nevada Pure. From the moment you make an appointment with us, your care, health, and well-being is our priority. Nevada Pure is located at 4360 Boulder Highway, Las Vegas, Nevada. Check out their entire menu at WWDBTV.com.
Welcome back to the Nevada Cannabis News Hour. So, what we were just talking about, the majority of people on the side of cannabis, and we were talking about some employment issues. You had another...
Well, there's a number of things that it all kind of interconnects in this issue, and one of the reasons why it's so difficult for people to gain employment and all when they've been consuming is because cannabis is a Schedule I drug under the United States federal guidelines, and we most likely anybody who's listening to this show knows that just a couple of weeks ago the DEA refused to reschedule cannabis out of Schedule I, despite ample evidence, and they were saying that that not enough studies have been conducted in this and that, and so you saw in a lot of the press that
don't they hold a patent?
They hold a patent on 3 cannabinoids as neuroprotectants, and those patents were granted in 2003.
So those of you that have been seeing people all over social media holding up their hand with the numbers on the hand, that's what that is. That's the patent for cannabis as medicine that the U.S. government holds. So what they're trying to say is talk to the hand because you hold a patent on this. So that was right after this DEA thing that all came out. Everyone was holding their hand up with the U.S. patent number on their hand.
Well, I guess it shows I'm getting old. I don't spend as much time on social media as you do. But, I saw a lot of the mainstream media on this trying to spin this that, oh, it's a step forward because you're allowing for more research and you're allowing for more sites to grow cannabis in order to be researched. And I've spoken to other people in the industry and read a lot of other things that say, that's just essentially a false ray of sunshine, that it's not such a big thing that anybody should get excited about it. And what the DEA in their statement said that they've concluded the best way to satisfy the current researcher demand for a variety of strains of marijuana is to increase the number of federally authorized marijuana grows. But the problem is one of these fellows researching it, Ryan Vandry, who's a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Johns Hopkins University, which is one of the most widely respected and prestigious medical schools in the country. He's been studying cannabis for years, but he's never needed much marijuana to actively study the drug. And he says that adding growers will make very little change going forward in my research. The problem is not lack of supply, it's the regulatory hoops that we have to jump through to obtain it. And of course, jumping through hoops is standard in any scientific research, but he says the process is unnecessarily laborious for cannabis studies. Researchers go through the regular steps to approve any drug research, secure grant funding, obtain scientific review of the study's merits, and then get approval from either the board or the FDA. But studying marijuana, which is still Schedule I, means that they must obtain a license from both the federal government and from the state where the study is going to be located. And so to do so, a lab must have stringent requirements, such as having a safe on premises to store this dangerous substance, and many university labs don't have that kind of don't have safes in them because they just don't need them.
Especially in a university lab. I've seen the stuff that they get for the research from our good friend Dr. Sue Sisley.
Friend of the show.
And the college students have much better stuff, let me tell you. They're not going to be breaking into the lab to steal these sticks and stems and seeds that they're giving them. Mm-hmm. That's what she says is the real holdup is NIDA, and the fact is you can put in a request for medicine and there is no time limit on this. They can just sit on somebody's desk for years, and then when you do get the medicine, the stuff they give you is not quality medicine to do any testing on. It's like she showed me they just take the whole plant. There is no trimming process, and they take the whole plant and just grind it up. So you're getting the stalks, the stems. They don't care if it's male or female. Yeah, the stems.
And all of that gives you headaches, and it's just not conducive to a positive experience or a positive research experience.
Yep, and plus they're not able to get the correct strains. Like she says, I need a 2-to-1 CBD or a 2-to-1 THC, and they don't even have any clue, how to produce that correct medicine. Whereas here, I've already seen through our Nevada program, We have the 2-to-1 THC. We have the 2-to-1 CBD. We have the 50/50s. We have the high CBD. We have the high THC. We have just about anything you could want into that. And with research, they don't. They don't have access to the true medicinal end of it, like as even we as patients have here in Nevada.
I remember meeting LV Musica, who was one of the remaining patients on the federal NIDA program, which is the federal medical marijuana program. I think there are only 4 of these people left alive.
Big can.
And yeah, I met her a few years ago, and she would get a big can every month from the government, 300 grams of pre-rolled cannabis joints, and she said she never smoked them. She said that the quality was so poor, all that she could do was just unwrap them, throw them into butter or something like that, and use it for edibles. And anything that she actually had for relief of her severe glaucoma, and she's legally blind as a result of it, would come from different people who would just donate good quality cannabis to her. Part of the problem here is doing these studies now since Schedule 1 takes a year to get approval from the federal government, like the FDA, but then it goes over to the DEA for a separate approval, and there's no time limit on how long the DEA has to hold on to this stuff. And some people I've read, it's years they've been waiting for answers. The fellow I just mentioned here said Vandry said his last study took 1.5 years to be approved on that first step, and then he's still waiting again. So we know that the DEA does everything that they can to protect their turf, to protect their budgeting, and nobody should be surprised at this or that they refuse to reschedule. So it's just crazy situations, huh?
Now I was just reading a story. The Olympics just ended. And congratulations, United States and Michael Phelps. Jeez, that guy was going to retire.
That dope smoking
yeah,
fiend. How dare
it just makes you lazy and unproductive. Oh my God!
But at the same time, it's performance enhancing.
Yeah, he brought home another 5 golds and a silver this time, and no close to that. But on a side note, the Olympics have come to accept marijuana. Ever since 2012 and 2013, they have loosened, the World Anti-Doping Agency has loosened its rules against cannabis use for athletes. And we saw it with the Russian team. They pretty much allowed the Russian team to compete even though they were doping. So it's gotten to that point. Right now, there is no longer any intent to stop athletes from smoking in the days and the weeks leading up to competition, but to prevent cannabis use on the day of competition. So that's what the Olympics have kind of gone to with cannabis. So we are seeing these changes slowly come through. And your Olympics, that's a worldwide thing. That's not just America. That's the whole world, saying that, hey, we don't mind if our athletes are smoking a little pot on the weekends and this and that, as long as they're not using it when they're performing.
Although it's interesting that you mentioned the Russians, and of course some of the Russian track and field people were banned from the Olympics, and they're not being allowed to take place in the Paralympics that are now underway because of this whole doping scandal, and so. And why is that? It seems that they're in this because the sponsors of the Russian athletic team and the government was fine with them using these steroids or other things to dope up. And yet at the same time, in the United Nations, where people have been trying to go for reform, the staunchest opponent of reform is the Russian government, and the Russian government does not want any drug reform, cannabis, or anything else like that. But hypocritically, when it comes to getting some gold medals here,
some steroids are fine.
Steroids are fine. It's a crazy situation, but gee, if we had a general legalization, they could be making buku bucks making cannabis infused vodka. So I don't get the point. We're about to wrap up, but we got a party coming up.
Yep, this Sunday, the 28th. It's over at 4525 TP Lane. You can find it on our website.
That's up in the Northwest.
Yep, this is a patient fundraiser. We're doing this to raise money for people that are in need, people that can't work, veterans. We pay for their cars. I was just at the doctor's office today, and I took care of 3 more. One of them, a 27-year-old, a veteran who's disabled. In service disability. So, these are the kind of people that we love to help. I mean, this poor guy went out there, put his life on the line for us. He didn't really fight in any big wars, but he was out there and he got disabled serving our country. And those are the people that WeCan stands up and gets behind on.
And by coming to this party and helping WeCan fundraise, because there's a cover charge, by doing this, you are also supporting those veterans. You are also helping these people get back to some semblance of normalcy in their life.
Mm-hmm. So come on out and join us this weekend. It's going to be a whole lot of fun, and it is a pool party. So in the great words of our good friend Towley, don't forget to bring a towel.
Yeah, you don't have to bring a bathing suit, but don't bring a towel. But don't forget your towel.
So, and with that, check us out on our website, www.wecan702.org. It's been great talking with you, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time.